With Depp V Heard making waves on Netflix, people are now revisiting the trial and the malicious vitriol directed at Amber Heard across social media. In this short video, we summarize the UK trial, the US trial, and exactly why public sentiment has shifted in support of Amber a year after the US verdict.
Before the infamous US trial, Depp filed a libel suit against The Sun, a UK publication, in June of 2018 for publishing an item to their website on April 27, 2018 with the following headline, "Gone Potty, How Can J.K. Rowling Be Genuinely Happy Casting Wife-Beater Johnny Depp in the New Fantastic Beasts Film?" a title which has since been updated. The libel claim hinged on the use of the phrase wife-beater, so The Sun, oddly, had to prove that Depp had physically abused his wife Amber Heard at least one time. Because of this, Heard provided The Sun with a mountain of evidence to prove this abuse, and The Sun cited 14 incidents of physical abuse in their defense. The trial was held in July 2020 over the course of 3 weeks. In context of what happened during the US trial, it's important to note that this case was judged by a judge, not a jury, was not televised, and that parts of the trial were conducted in private, as is common in cases that deal with sexual and physical violence, such as this one. It's also important to understand that libel claims in the UK are notoriously hard to lose. The system there highly favors the plaintiff, to the point where libel tourism, or the practice of plaintiffs taking libel cases to Great Britain, even when it doesn't really make sense for the case to be filed there, is a common occurrence. The reason it's so much easier to win a libel case in the UK is because the burden is on the defendant, in this case The Sun, to prove their claims are substantially true. Therefore, it is notable that Depp lost his claim against The Sun, and his subsequent appeals were all denied. For this type of case, the evidence had to meet a burden of balance of probabilities, which is a less stringent standard than beyond all reasonable doubt. The burden on The Sun was to prove to the judge that it was more likely true than not true that these events occurred the way Heard claimed that they did. However, given the severity of the claims, it should be noted that the burden of proof was higher than it would be for non-criminal accusations. Though it still didn't have to meet the standard of beyond all reasonable doubt, it did have to be proved to quite a high degree of probability for the judge to rule that the event happened. To that end, the judge, Justice Nicol, ruled in The Sun's favor, stating that The Sun had proved its article to be substantially true and found that 12 of the 14 alleged incidents of domestic violence against Heard had occurred. For the 2 of the 14 allegations he did not find in favor of, he did not state that they had not happened, simply that the burden of proof was not met for him to be able to rule that they had. The judgment was not made publicly available until November 2020, a few days after which Depp was asked by Warner Brothers to resign from the Fantastic Beasts franchise, a consequence that resulted from a legal action taken by Depp, not Heard. Regarding the appeals, in March 2021, a British court refused Depp permission to further appeal the judge's ruling, saying his attempt to overturn the decision had no real prospect of success. 2 Court of Appeal judges said the earlier court hearing was full and fair, and Judge Nicol's conclusions had not been shown, even arguably, to be vitiated by any error of approach or mistake of the law, which is a fancy way to say Depp's complaint was unfounded. They concluded that the appeal has no real prospect of success and that there was no other compelling reason for it to be heard. In the US, Depp filed a $50 million defamation lawsuit against Heard in March of 2019 for an op-ed she published in the Washington Post in 2018, headlined, "I spoke up against sexual violence and faced our culture's wrath. That has to change." Heard never mentions Depp by name in the article, only referring to herself as a public figure representing domestic abuse. Heard countersued, seeking $100 million in damages and claiming Depp's legal team falsely accused her of fabricating claims against him. The trial was held in Fairfax, Virginia, starting on April 11, 2022. Depp filed the lawsuit in Fairfax, Virginia, instead of in California, where both parties live and work. He and his legal team likely did this because Virginia is known to be a plaintiff-friendly state for defamation cases. Similar to the libel tourism mentioned earlier, this practice of finding a way to get a case into a more favorable court system is called venue shopping. In regards to this, it is relevant to note that the statute of limitations for defamation is 1 year in California. Depp could have sued Heard over the restraining order, which was filed in 2016, named him directly, had direct accusations of physical abuse, and did make headlines at the time, but chose not to. Instead, he waited to file these claims against her for an article published 2 years later that did not name him and made only vague, nonspecific references to abuses she had suffered within her marriage to him, but also with other men before she had even met him. By filing the defamation suit in response to the Washington Post op-ed, Depp was able to take advantage of Virginia's more lax anti-SLAPP laws and their unusually long-arm statute, which allowed his team to claim jurisdiction in Virginia due to the Washington Post printing press and online server being housed in Fairfax County. The verdict for the U.S. trial came out on June 1, 2022. Ultimately, it said that Depp won. The 7-member jury found that Heard was guilty of all 3 counts of defamation brought against her, and that Depp was entitled to $10 million in compensatory damages and punitive damages of $5 million. Because Virginia state law limits punitive damages to $350,000, the actual amount awarded was $10.35 million. Depp was found guilty of 1 of the 3 counts brought against him, and Heard was awarded $2 million in compensation. In December 2022, Depp and Heard reached a settlement agreement despite having appeals pending. Heard agreed to pay Depp $1 million and managed to maintain her freedom to speak out about her experiences publicly by refusing to sign a gag order. Of this settlement, Heard made a long post on Instagram about it, some key statements from which include, "After a great deal of deliberation, I have made a very difficult decision to settle the defamation case brought against me by my ex-husband in Virginia. I finally have the opportunity to emancipate myself from something I attempted to leave over 6 years ago and on terms I can agree to. I have made no omission. This is not an act of concession. There are no restrictions or gags with respect to my voice moving forward. For too many years, I have been caged in an arduous and expensive legal process which has shown itself unable to protect me and my right to free speech. I cannot afford to risk an impossible bill, one that is not just financial, but also psychological, physical, and emotional. Women should not have to face abuse or bankruptcy for speaking her truth, but unfortunately, it is not uncommon."
Luckily, there are signs that we won't have to wait a decade or more to see the redemption of Amber Heard. Just 1 year after the trial concluded, public sentiment is already shifting towards supporting Amber. It all began with the unsealed documents. 2 months after the trial concluded, many of Depp's fans crowdfunded the $3,300 cost to release over 6,600 pages worth of unsealed trial documents, which showed plenty of filings that paint Depp in an unflattering light. The unsealed documents showed that Heard's team feared Depp's team would use nude photos of her in the trial in an attempt to frivolously and maliciously suggest she was once a sex worker. They uncovered crude texts between Depp and Marilyn Manson. They rehashed his history of alleged misconduct with testimony from ex-agent Tracy Jacobs and ex-girlfriend Ellen Barkin. And they revealed that Heard willingly walked away from a fortune in the divorce proceedings. After that, over a dozen celebrities who had liked JD's Instagram post gloating about the win unliked the post. This post was one of the most liked Instagram posts of all time with over 19 million likes. Heard's post, by contrast, got only 480,000 likes. The celebrities who unliked the post were Amanda Knox, Bella Hadid, Halle Bailey, Jamie Campbell-Bower, Joe Perry, Joey King, Maren Morris, Melissa Ordway, Rachel Kirkconnell, Riley Keough, Sophie Turner, and Youngblood. Because they're celebrities, the fact that they did this got press. After this, we saw more subreddits critical of Johnny and more videos, TikToks, tweets, etc. that seemed to be slowly shifting in favor of Amber. In November of 2022, over 140 people, including Gloria Steinem and Ms. Magazine, Constance Wu, Allen vs. Farrow director Amy Ziering, the National Women's Law Center, the National Organization for Women, Women's March Foundation, Women's Equal Justice Project, and more, signed an open letter via NBC News supporting Amber Heard. They stood against vilification, ongoing online harassment, and unprecedented vitriol. They stressed that the June 1st verdict would have damaging consequences for other survivors coming forward. They wrote, "Much of this harassment was fueled by disinformation, misogyny, biphobia, and a monetized social media environment where a woman's allegations of domestic violence and sexual assault were mocked for entertainment. The same disinformation and victim-blaming tropes are now being used against others who have alleged abuse. In our opinion, the Depp v Heard verdict and continued discourse around it indicate a fundamental misunderstanding of intimate partner and sexual violence and how survivors respond to it. The damaging consequences of the spread of this misinformation are incalculable. We have grave concerns about the rising misuse of defamation suits to threaten and silence survivors." In May of 2023, Glamour magazine republished an investigation that they had published a year prior, showing that public sentiment was shifting towards support for Amber. They wrote that after the initial publication, they received a barrage of messages and comments from Depp supporters wanting to level further abuse at Heard. Since then, however, they continue to be vindicated. The hashtag #CansYouNot campaign went viral on Twitter, with Heard supporters accusing Cannes of rewarding violence against women, since Cannes opened with Depp's new film, Jean du Barry, where he was given a 7-minute standing ovation. The campaign pointed to other abusers like Woody Allen and Roman Polanski, who were also celebrated by Cannes. On Saturday, the 20th of May, the cast of Le Ravissement took to the stage ahead of their screening, with many wearing t-shirts that read, "I stand with Amber Heard." Anecdotally, people are sharing across a number of platforms that places like Tumblr and TikTok are seeing much more support for Heard. So yes, very thankfully, we may not need to wait 10 years or more for Heard to be redeemed.
Throughout the trial, Johnny's team continuously evoked the idea that Amber was intent on ruining a good man's name and reputation. In the words of Johnny's lawyer, no matter what the outcome of the trial, he will be seen as an abuser, which is the worst thing you could say about a man, and that this is a blow against Depp that was more damaging than any physical blow she had ever landed, which is evoking this classic trope that lets countless men off the hook for their actions, that no matter how battered, raped, or dead a woman is, it pales in comparison to the absolute horror of holding a man accountable for his actions. And to be clear, he hasn't actually suffered any real consequences for his actions at all. In fact, it seems he might have benefited from all the outrage marketing. So days after the trial, he flew on a jet where he performed on stage. Netflix is going to be streaming Jean du Barry this year, his comeback film. He recently signed the biggest men's fragrance pact in history with Dior. The cosmetic brand Milani supported Johnny throughout the trial. He's confirmed to be directing his first film in 25 years, and in Johnny's own words, he said, "Do I feel boycotted now? No, not at all, because I didn't go anywhere." And people will say, well, he did suffer consequences with Fantastic Beasts or Pirates of the Caribbean, but it's been confirmed that the consequences he suffered from not being able to continue with those films was due to his own behaviour on set. History is constantly repeating itself. Me Too seemed to benefit a lot of famous men accused of violence. Louis C.K. won a Grammy despite his comedy album, which characterizes the sexual abuse accusations levied against him as consensual. Mel Gibson was charged with misdemeanor spousal battery and yet continues to direct award-winning movies on our screens. Brett Kavanaugh was appointed to the US Supreme Court. Even when there are consequences, they're quickly overturned. Bill Cosby is out of jail on a legal loophole. The conviction of Harvey Weinstein is being appealed. Marilyn Manson tried to sue his victim, Evan Rachel Woods. And what happens to the women who come forward? Lorena Bobbitt, Monica Lewinsky, Pamela Anderson, Anita Hill, Britney Spears, they all received the same exact treatment that Amber is receiving. Their careers are ruined and they're receiving death threats, and Amber literally had to move across the globe to start a new life because of the amount of hatred, violence, and vitriol against her.
Thank you for watching, everyone, and please share to increase this video's reach.